Hello and welcome to this special show on Rajya Sabha television. I am Vishal Dahiya, and here we take a stock of India's battle against COVID-19 pandemic. Now, one of the very important aspects in this particular battle is the testing strategy or the testing methodology, and RT-PCR is considered to be the gold standard test for COVID-19. Today, we are going to talk about a particular methodology in RT-PCR test, which has been developed by Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, that is CCMB. And for this, we're joined by three distinguished guests. Let me first introduce them to you. We have with us Dr. Rakesh Mishra. He's the director of CCMB. We also have with us Dr. Samiran Panda. He's scientist G and also the head of ECD division in ICMR. We're also joined by Dr. Ekta Gupta. She's the professor in the Department of Virology at ILBS. Welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha TV. Let me first begin with you, Dr. Mishra. Let's start by trying to understand the dry swab method for RT-PCR test, which we are talking about today.
Yeah, thank you. So the dry swab method is same as currently used RT-qPCR method. What we are doing differently is collecting the swabs in a dry tube and not putting in a VTM, that is viral transfer medium, in which normally the buffer is the samples are brought to the testing labs, because in this medium the virus is alive and safe. And then so we are removing the VTM completely from the steps, and I will explain to you in a bit why. And then the other major change we have done is that after normally the sample comes to the lab, you take out a little bit of VTM and then do RNA extraction from this. So the virus is an RNA virus. You make the RNA from this. Then you may convert that RNA into DNA and then do a PCR, a special PCR like real-time PCR, and detect if there was a signal or not. So that is the full procedure. So what we are doing, first keeping the VTM and bringing dry sample, and then taking the virus out, in fact the virus and its RNA out by a simple diffusion using tris-EDTA buffer we call TE, that is a very cheap buffer available in all the biology labs, and leave the thing for half an hour, and then take a small quantity of it, inactivate, and straight away go for RT-PCR. So you are not doing RNA extraction step. So these two changes, that's leaving out the VTM and skipping the RNA extraction, helps in several ways. One is you don't need VTM, so you save some money. You are now transporting samples dry, so you don't have a leakage problem. You don't have to seal the tubes with lot of tape and so on, so they are safe. And no matter how much is done, sample collection is done in the places where the guys are not, everybody is not expert. So when samples come, they leak, and then the healthcare worker or those who are testing, they have to be very careful. So it takes a lot of time to unpack the samples, and those who do the testing, Dr. Gupta will agree with that. It takes a lot of time to unpack the samples and put it for what we call as a cataloging. So it saves time and trouble and makes it safer and faster. And skipping the RNA, again, extraction step of RNA, saves several hours of time depending upon which method you are using, and saves the money that is required for RNA extraction. And having said that, I should point out that when you do this, we must have accuracy of the current method, and we have validated it multiple times with other places, and the validity, I mean the sensitivity of the method is of the current available RT-PCR methods. So this allows us to do things faster, safer, with less expense. And what is the other thing it does is that because you are not spending too much of time in packing an RNA extraction, and actually the RT-PCR step is a short one. It takes maybe 1.5 hours to run. So with the same machine, now you can do multiple RT-PCR because you don't have to do RNA extraction. So you can actually 3-fold, 4-fold increase your capacity with same infrastructure and human resource, because you don't need the extra thing. So that is why we are very keen that this method should be put in the use, because it will save time. And most importantly, if you are doing a lab is doing 200 tests, can do easily 500, 600 tests or even more.
Okay, okay. Let's hear Dr. Samiran Panda's views on this, because ICMR is the organization which gives approval to all these kind of tests. Dr. Panda, would you agree with Dr. Mishra there? And all these aspects, specifically time saving, safety measures also are a little better, because if you skip some steps, obviously you can also skip the processes where there are issues with the safety, and the accuracy part is also, as Dr. Mishra is saying, taken care of.
Absolutely. This is an extraordinary time, and it demands extraordinary innovative solution. So this particular approach does take into account this whole appeal of being innovative. Moreover, we are talking about a country like India, which is huge, and there are difficult terrains or locations where it's really difficult to reach out to, and the technology won't be easily available. For example, in the RNA extraction, these are just two English words, but it comes with a technology requirement. So it's easy to hear, but it's not that easy to perform. So what I would say that when some steps which are technologically demanding, we remove them from the requirement chain, then it reaches out to far-off places where that technology doesn't exist. That's the second advantage, as I see. The third advantage, I would say, it's a testing time. I mean, in both ways. If you go with English, it's a difficult time. But when we say testing time, you could even explain it the time when you need to have more and more tests done. Because the strategy is to do more tests and then treat if required, and even track the contacts in order to see whether the infection has spread to the contacts of a confirmed case of COVID-19. So if we need to increase the number of tests, so it is all the more important that we reduce the time to do a test, do it well, not at the cost of the quality of the test. So if there is something which is not compromising with the quality but saving on time, would always be welcome, because there is a necessity of testing more and more people so that we test, we track, and we treat. And finally, anything which goes with liquid, think of our childhood days, or even today, we are messy in terms of handling liquids. So when you talk about the viral transport medium, that's a liquid in a tube. So if you get away with that, but don't necessarily get away with the ultimate desirable goal of identifying whether there is infection or the presence of infection, that would be most welcome. So it's not only, handling the messiness of the liquid, the cost part of it, because the VTM, when it comes in a tube, there is a cost attached to it. So there is nothing called free VTM. I'm just removing or replacing the word lunch with VTM. There is no free lunch. Similarly, there is no free VTM. And again, the quality of the VTM that you will use. Yeah. So quality control issue is also another issue. So the lesser number of items you use, you are able to ensure the quality of them. You are cutting down on the cost. And if there is a comparability with the so-called gold standard of classical RT-PCR, then why not?
Okay, definitely. It saves time. Perhaps it saves money as well, being more cost effective, and no change in the efficacy or the accuracy as well. So looks like it's a wonderful way to go ahead with. Let me bring in Dr. Ekta Gupta here. Dr. Ekta, you deal with samples on a daily basis out there, and obviously use techniques like RT-PCR or perhaps some other methods as well. Now, the dry swab method of the RT-PCR testing methodology, how would you look at that? What kind of positives or advantages it might have when or if you have to use it on a daily basis?
Okay, so first of all, I'll congratulate Dr. Rakesh Mishra and his team for coming up with such a wonderful test. And if ICMR, as Dr. Panda has said, they approve it and they give it to the labs to do it, then it would definitely be a boon to the labs. Because as rightly pointed out by both the previous speakers, the extraction is the most cumbersome, most dangerous, and the most time-consuming method. And it's not very simple. And day to day, like my lab, who's dealing with about 800 to 900 odd samples in a day, our technical staff, that's the extraction work is done mostly by our technical staff, they and the students, and they are the one who are struggling with it. And because it is a liquid, they have to handle it, they have to vortex it, centrifuge it, and do the pipetting and all. So it's also a very much aerosol, like in technical terms we call it's the most risky exposure, exposing them to the virus. So anything, if you can go away without that step, so that will save 3.5 hours or maybe 2 to 3 hours. It will be less risky. It will be easy to do, and straight away, like once you inactivate the virus, then it is like any other thing. So you can just plate a PCR, and the PCR results come out within half an hour or 1 hour, depending upon the kit you are having, 1 hour to 2 hours. Definitely, it will be a cost saving. But my only query is that we know that these viral transport media is used for a purpose, to preserve the virus, and so that the virus does not get affected, the nucleic acid does not get affected. And country like ours, where extremes of temperature, dry, and conditions are always there. The samples are collected long time back, and then the way they are transported and the conditions in which we are surviving. So my question and my queries would be that whether this method would not give a false negativity, means because of there is nothing to preserve the virus, it should not affect. So I think ICMR has to give us a clear-cut guidelines.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think the labs will welcome this method with open arms, because anything which is going to save their time and prevent unnecessary exposure is always welcome. But my query was about the effectiveness, and it should not. How do we deal with the issue of that it is not giving us it's not killing the virus, and if the virus is preserved at the test.
Okay, let's hear on that from Dr. Mishra first. Dr. Mishra, quite an interesting point coming in from Dr. Gupta there. Obviously, saving time is one very important aspect, and it does also save the trouble on the safety aspect, because if you let go of the entire process, then you can breathe a bit easy on that also. But to ensure that it is not false negative, and how do we ensure that in this particular method?
Right. So that's very important concern, because whenever you are developing a new test, you have to make sure that you are not missing out something, as the whole point is lost. So the way we have done is, so I can give the answer straight away first, and then how we did. So if you transport the samples, dry swabs at 4 degrees, up to 4 days, there is no problem. We have tested. After 4 days, our students lost patience. They say, we cannot wait anymore, more than 4 days, there is no point. And if you can even put them at room temperature, and for 24 hours we see no loss in the CT value. The reason is not that difficult, because what we are saying is the number of RNA particles, RNA strands, so not the living virus. This virus may not live that much. We grow the virus in the lab. We have a VSL3 facility in which we are growing and testing the virus for vaccine, for other purposes. We need living virus for that. But if you need living virus which you are going to culture, then we have to do more tests to see whether the virus is culturable after or not. But for the test purpose, where even a dead virus will give you the signal, because your assay is counting that, copying that RNA and following, it has absolutely no issues. And we have what we have done is we have put a lot of varieties, and we have requested 2 other major institutions to test it. And all these documents we have presented in. One is our Hyderabad-based lab, which is a Department of Biotechnology lab, which is designed for this kind of activities, called Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, CDFD, the famous lab for DNA-based diagnostics and fingerprinting approaches. And so they have done it, and they have validated, and they keep asking me when the test is being approved, because they want to start using it. So they're very excited and happy. And the other place which has tested is the Indian Institute of Science and Education Research in Berhampur in Odisha. So these ICMR top biology institutions the country has made that has made a difference in the science and biology in general, and they have recommended very strongly because they're very happy and the test worked in their hands as well. We would like lots of people to do it, but to do that, what you need is that a person who is collecting the swab for the testing purpose should collect one swab and put in the VTM, then collect another swab from other nose and put in dry tube and send both the things, and you compare both. Then only you can say how good or bad your test is. So these two places could find partner, innovative healthcare workers and doctors with their MOUs and all to do those experimental things. And hundreds of people we have tested now with all these three institutions, and it's pretty reliable. Otherwise, we'll not go that.
Okay. That answers Dr. Gupta's questions, and also what Dr. Mishra is pointing out clearly shows the impeccable track record in terms of testing it elsewhere as well. This entire methodology. Dr. Panda, in terms of letting the labs now take over in terms of utilizing this methodology, how long it might take, because ICMR is finally the organization which has to give the go ahead, and looks like everything seems to be falling in place. And as you're saying, these are testing times. We need to not only work innovatively but also test more.
Absolutely. So you have packed 2 or 3 issues in one question. One is to get an approval, and there is a process involved. It's pretty standardized now in ICMR. So an application for it is moved very fast in order to respond to the public health need of today. The other bit is about anything new or change in life is seen as something difficult or challenging. The point I'm trying to make here is about those who are familiar with a particular system would always question themselves that how good it would perform. The studies that have been done by Dr. Mishra and his team and the partner institutions, they clearly compared the performance or assessed the performance of this new approach with the standard classical RT-PCR method. So evidence has been generated. People, as suggested by Dr. Mishra, could also generate their local level evidence, because that will give a type of confidence, and that confidence building measure would really go a long way before it scales up. And Dr. Ekta Gupta actually highlighted one important issue, that purposes are different. So if the first purpose or the goal is to test and to diagnose somebody, so that's one. But at the same time, if I need to ensure that I get the live virus at hand or in the laboratory for future investigations, one always could think of other innovations as well. As Dr. Mishra said, while comparing the two methods, they did use VTM and the traditional method. You have to do that. And the new method examined or assessed against the old and the standard ones. And I would say that biomedical research is a subject or a stream where incremental knowledge adds to the total knowledge base. So right now, we have something which is interesting, exciting, and that would serve the purpose of diagnosis. In terms of what Dr. Gupta actually raised, would require other innovations which could happen at the periphery, and then as a bulk could be transported to a central facility where more genetic experiments related to the genomics could happen. So it is not, either or situation. It's one situation which is readily, demanding at hand, like more diagnosis or more testing happening. At the same time, some more innovations, because I am tempted to draw your attention to the phenomena of dried blood spots, which has been used for other diagnostic tests as well. So there is a simile. For example, previously it would be drawing blood from the main vein, and how do you transport them? Do the test tubes get broken on the journey? But then it came the dried blood spots on the filter paper, and you even save four spots, but just make use of one spot to know whether the person from whom you collected that spot is infected with hepatitis C, for that matter, or even for metabolic disorders in children. That can also be detected through the dried blood spot. So these are the medical innovations which really address the public health needs of the issues. And now nothing more could be, exciting than this innovation, or this kind of innovation.
Definitely, and as all of us know, the famous saying, necessity is the mother of invention, and obviously these testing times are creating that necessity, and that is why researchers and scientists like Dr. Mishra and several others have been working on several aspects, and therein we have these innovative solutions. Now, Dr. Ekta, you have the answer to your query. In case there is any other query, you can raise that as well. But apart from that, would you be now, as the person who works on the ground, would be waiting for getting this particular methodology on the ground, so that works become not only easier for you but also time saving in terms of increasing the entire efficiency of the testing strategy and the methodology there?
Yeah, we would be definitely waiting for the approval and such innovative testing methods to come, because as we all know, the need of the hour is test, 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 and isolate. And we really have to increase the testing capacity, the testing numbers, the testing sites, testing methodologies. So anything which comes by which you are able to, looking at the population of India, if we just restrict ourselves to the fancy molecular RT-PCR tests and limit ourselves to only, high labs, we would not be able to reach that number. So anything by which testing is increased, the methods are made easier, faster, more friendly for the people who are working in the labs or the ground level, that will add on to the need of the hour, and that would definitely will let us fight with this pandemic in a much more better and more equipped manner. So all these innovations, whether these are point of care of tests which are coming, whether the time and methodology has been simplified, whether the algorithm is simplified, all these things matter at this time of what country needs, and we all are there along with the ICMR, so that all the labs services are strengthened and we can test as many people as possible.
Okay, Dr. Mishra, concluding comments from you before we bring this to an end. We have already spoken in detail about the benefits of this dry swab method, but specifically a word from you to those who are there on the ground, on the front line, like Dr. Ekta Gupta, daily involved in all these processes, as to how they can reap benefits of this particular methodology and perhaps scale it up further as well.
Yeah. So a few advantages. I just want to add one more point to what we are talking, and which is important point Dr. Panda raised. So we have tested with the dry swab method. We can do genome sequencing as good as RNA isolated from the VTMs, because CCMB is one of the places where we have sequenced now 400 isolates of the virus, and we are studying how the virus is mutating. That's a different story. It works well. And at the moment, I cannot guarantee that TE extracted virus will grow. We have preliminary indications, but our VSL facility is busy testing many other things, so they don't give priority to something we already have virus isolate that are growing and going. But there's a good possibility that even the living virus, if we want, it will come. But main purpose we are emphasizing right now is that you can implement this without adding any extra training, any extra equipment, any extra reagent. You are just cutting down few things and making it simpler. The innovation that we have made is that while VTM is good for the virus, it is inhibitory for reverse transcriptase. So any other method of using direct VTM samples was not working. Once you take that out and tweak little with the RNA release from the virus, which is by heating it for a few minutes at 98 degree, has made the purpose that we were looking for it. So that's why we think that scaling up, if this is provided while the gold standard continues, the options is given to the lab that if you want, you can try this also. They don't need any extra thing. So all they need is extra this dry swab coming from the collection center, and they will be able to use it. Once they're confident, they can switch to one another. As I said, you don't require anything additional in any testing lab. And for that, then you can actually test in much safer way. So that will increase the confidence of the healthcare worker when they are handling liquid. As Dr. Panda very rightly pointed out, handling liquid is very different story. Many times we have to wait for 2-3 hours for bubbles to go away because they don't want to open. There are bubbles in the tube because there may be aerosols and all floating, and we respect those care that is taken. So I think because the method is simpler, just removing a few steps and safer, faster, and money is important. You can actually reduce the cost to half of it, because if you don't do RNA extraction, it's not only the reagents you are saving, you are also saving the tubes and the tips. These are expensive plastic. Definitely. So lots of things are related to that. So we can, with the same existing setup, with same existing human resource, we can test with much less cost the samples faster, safer, and increase the capacity 3-fold, 4-fold, depending upon how fast we can set up the RT-PCRs. So I'm looking forward to more labs using it, because this is the time we need. It will make a difference if we are testing 2 lakhs or we are testing 10 lakhs. That will make a big difference, and we hope that this will see light of the day quick.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra there, Dr. Panda, and Dr. Gupta also for sharing your valuable views and time with us on this particular aspect. As our panelists are pointing out, the dry swab methodology for RT-PCR testing kit, that which is considered to be the gold standard testing methodology for COVID-19, obviously has its benefits in terms of making it more simpler, making it more safer, and perhaps saving a bit of money as well, making it more cost effective. But the most important aspect is that it also helps us right now in the strategy which is being adopted, that is test, and conduct more tests out there to fight this particular virus, that is COVID-19. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, you keep watching Rajya Sabha television, but please do not forget to step out of your houses with a face mask. The war against COVID-19 is still on, and wearing a face mask is the best defense so far against this particular virus. Thank you.